day that the good Lord has afforded us. Today is the 19th of April 2023, and of course every Wednesday we have Global Today, where we update you on foreign policy, security and matters diplomacy. And right now we're doggedly putting our eyes on the current state of play in Sudan, where there is a strife, and we know there was an announcement of a 24-hour ceasefire, but that has been breached so far. We have also envoys, the diplomatic, envoy from the U.S. that was under attack, and we had also the Secretary of State really condemning that. We'll run you by that story. But we want to just, of course, speak the layers on what is happening in Sudan, and also how we have the broader global powers struggle that is playing out in Sudan. Is it a proxy war that we're currently seeing? And we know Burhan and Hemedit were supposed to be stewards of a political transition back towards a democracy. But they appear to have, for their own reason, balked on that particular process. And right now, the figures stands at 200 people who have died so far. We have a Kenyan also who was shot there, and her mother, she's really crying out for the government to evacuate her from Sudan for her safety. And the failure to form a government in Sudan and the deterioration of the economic and security situation in the country prompted the various military and civilian parties to sign a framework agreement in December 2022. We know that particular story and what really happened, which was widely accepted by civilians and important and influential parties from the international and regional communities. And we want just to focus on that this morning with the panelist. I have my able panelist, Ahmed Hashi, who's a governance and policy analyst. Also, we have Professor Naomi Damba, who is a foreign policy and diplomacy expert and defense expert as well. We have with us as well Ambassador Rasas Mwencha, who is a chair of Africa Capacity Building Foundation. And also we have with us Brigadier General Ahmed Mohammed, who is the Director of Security Strategic Studies at the National Defense University. And so I want just to welcome you, gentlemen. Good morning.
Good morning.
I trust you had a lovely evening.
Good morning. Yeah.
And it's good to see the chairman back. Chairman, we've been missing you for a while. Right? Yeah. We know you've been global trotting so far, making sure that you're our big ambassador. But glad to have you back.
Well, thank you very much. I don't know whether I should wait for my residents here to be able to say something before I say anything else.
I will say a little.
Yeah. No, we're just welcoming you.
I just want to welcome him and say, Boakire, Yantore Muno, Yande Muno, Karibu Kabisa. We have missed you a lot. Our chairman here, we have missed him. His insight, one of the most experienced.
But I've not had the chairman responding. So
he's responded.
I want to hear.
No, you can't respond. I'm the one who's talking.
It's very muted.
You know the language that his language is like a music opera. I love his language. If you see two Kisis talking, you think you're in a music hall. Very pretty language.
Chairman, they always say that Kisis they speak in sopranos.
Yes,
no.
If you hear Kisiman with a bass,
it's not very far from the truth, because if you are among, especially in the old days, when people used to go to the shamba and they used to have this collective farming, there are 10 women on a farm. They will all be speaking, and they all probably know what each one of them is saying. It's incredible.
Incredible. Okay. Thank you so much. And also I want to welcome you back, Brigadier General. It's been a while as well.
Thank you very much.
I know you've been busy.
Thank you very much indeed. In fact, I wanted to mention that I've been away for almost about 10 months now, but at the university, I'm now back at the home.
Oh, you're back at the home?
Back at the home now, yeah. At the Defense and Security Advisory.
Okay.
Yes.
And also, you just straight from India as well?
Yes. Oh, yes. I was in India for a conference on security. For about a week. I was also a speaker, which went on very, very well. And I was very impressed with what was going on in India. New Delhi, wow, a lot going on.
All right.
Very impressive.
Just to be an equal opportunity employer, let me also welcome the general in the, Mimi in Masai. Waria. So let me speak his language. Say, "Wa kusodo weni." Subah al khair. Sodo walaki qariga general.
Thank you very much indeed. Appreciated. Well done.
We need some translations here.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah,
just
so
it's the same thing I talked to you about.
and Professor Noami Damba, last night you were here as well.
No, tonight.
Tonight, okay.
Tonight I'll be here to talk about with Ken Mujungo to talk about higher education funding.
Higher education funding.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Very important.
Very important. I'm looking forward to.
Yes, and we.
You know, we're always happy to see him. Jatelo, Iwinjo, Erokamano.
This is my name.
Nyasai there.
Becoming a linguist.
No, he's a linguist.
He's a
No,
linguist,
not only that. Even West Africa.
Oh.
Yeah, this guy speaks. He speaks almost every African language.
Wow.
So, Debal, I have some good news before I give it back to our senior here. Some of the best minds in this country have come together and they're going to form one of the largest consulting companies in Africa. And they have included me on the list. So when the time comes and everything is set up, I will announce it here and
Yes.
hopefully these gentlemen can join the board even.
Wow.
Let's see.
I look forward.
Naona hapa kuja hapa imenisaidia sana. So nasema asante sana.
Karibu sana. The dividends pay. Thank you. All right, we have a packed show, of course, and a lot of issues to discuss. But before we hit the ground, let's see what we have in our dailies. Today we begin with the bold paper, The Standard, and this is what is headlining the front page of The Standard this morning. Politics of ICC, why it may all be just hot air, is what is running as a splash today. Rhetoric, it says, let me try and zoom in there. Politicians and police boss have been issuing threats of going to the International Criminal Court at The Hague. But given the events surrounding the Azmir protest, it may not pass muster that the court, it may not pass muster the court. This story continues on page 4 and 5. And you know the story. The Rome Statute grants ICC jurisdiction over 4 main crimes. And this is why it may not really pass muster. It says the crime of genocide is characterized by the specific intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group by killing its members. Also crimes against humanity, which are serious violations committed as part of large-scale attack against any civilian population. 3, war crimes, which are grave breaches of the Geneva Conventions in the context of armed conflict and include, for instance, the use of child soldiers. And 4, crimes of aggression is the use of armed force by a state against the sovereignty, integrity, or independence of another state. So these are the main jurisdiction of ICC, and you know the drill right now. The letter that was written by the lawyer of Azimiola Umoja, submitting it to the prosecutor, Karim Khan of the ICC, with a raft of issues, even regarding our general election and also the issue of IBC as well. Running through the gamut of what we can see as the main crimes that is the jurisdiction of ICC, you can judge for yourself if it really passes muster or not, or it is hot air. That is what we have on the front page of The Standard today. Azimio not talks and less team is expanded. This is the new requirement, and it seems now Azimio Umoja is rowing back on its agreement on the bipartisan talk. That story well fleshed out for you on page 6 of The Standard today. Traders rushed to clear maize stock as imports land. Traders rushed to clear maize stock as imports land. That is another story on page 12 of The Standard today. Now, failure to crack down on gangs returns to bite. A report on criminal gangs and elections warns failure to rein in thugs associated with politicians will always precipitate violence. There's a special report for you today on page 10 and 11 of The Standard. Treasury now eyes Eurobond. After failing to raise enough money in the local markets, government is mulling external lenders. This story continues on page 24 of The Standard. They really painted, of course, to a corner right now as far as financial constraints is concerned. Today also you have the Enterprise magazine that comes in handy for you every Wednesday inside The Standard. The price driving up the buy now, pay later, sell model. Find all the details there. And Boston keeps producing rare winners. Find who are the new winners there on page 37, 38, and 39 of the Standard. The Daily Nation, 72 hours of road carnage. Accident deaths in numbers. There are number of people who have died in road accidents in the last 3 days. That is 22. The last 3 days. 6 students of Bihi Secondary School who were killed in Naivasha crash, and 35 people who have died on Nairobi Eldoret Highway in less than a month. And you can see also how we have an illustration of this presented for you on the map of Kenya. There are 6 students traveling home for the school holidays yesterday became the latest casualties on our roads just hours after 16 others lost their lives separately in Taita Taveta, Murang'a and Nakuru. The cabinet directed the concerned players to act to curb the crashes. But it always have to come to this for action. That is a problem question they ask. But must it always have to come to this for action to be taken? This story continues on page 7 of the Daily Nation this morning. Debt headache as Kenya seeks new Eurobond. The National Treasury targets to issue a new Eurobond to manage next year's maturity of 270 billion shillings 10-year bond, exposing a deepening debt trap as the government continues kicking the can down the road. First with the stark reality of handling the large maturing loan amid highly ballooned debts servicing cost in the recent years and the country's highly weakened local currency against the US dollar, the Treasury has opted for another Eurobond, yet again putting off a chance to confront the worsening debt situation in the country. Talk about digging a hole and digging it even much deeper. This is where we are at right now, and that is a big headache for the Cabinet Secretary there in Treasury. Let me just show you also what we have there on the sidebar. Raila rejects bipartisan talks by MPs. Azimio insists that it will only participate in process outside the House in view of the structure, or it should be the structure of debate in Parliament. You should follow that story on page 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. Parenting comes in handy for you every Wednesday, rising above childhood trauma, and also religion, spooky village where cult lured villagers to deadly fasting. In some of the houses, dirty dishes have been gathering dust, an indication of the last meal adherents of the controversial Good News International Church had before launching into a deadly fast. That is on page 12 of the Daily Nation this morning. This is how it looks. Let's see what the star is holding for us. U-turn by MPs spares big fish with graft cases. That is a splash. Also, Azimio rejects talks, threatens to ditch dialogue. And lawmakers probe Ruto's 15 billion shillings. We'll try and see clearly what it says here on the copy of the Star. That is a fertilizer subsidy. Ruto or lawmakers probe Ruto's 15 billion shillings fertilizer subsidies. MPs are demanding a forensic audit of the 15 billion shillings fertilizer subsidy program. The National Assembly's Public Accounts Committee wants a comprehensive money trail of the billions that were recently allocated to the Ministry of Agriculture for the program, which is at the heart of President William Ruto's economic transformative agenda. That story continues on page 8 of the Star today. 28 counties want to watch out for flooding. The weatherman has placed 28 counties on red alert for heavy rains this week. Meteorological Department Director Dr. David Gikungu said there is a high possibility of floods and lightning strikes in these counties this week. You can find out the listing of the counties, if you may, on page 2 of the Star. This is how it looks this morning. Make sure you grab a copy of the Star. Also looking on top here, if you may just have it back, good news. Doomsday cult unmasked with shocking tales. That is another story that you want to follow inside the Star this morning. Doomsday. Good news, Doomsday Count unmasked with shocking tales. That is another story that you want to follow. It's all about Pastor Mackenzie. All right, the People Daily is up next. Why reform talks? Why reform talks face major threats? Leaders disagree. Azimio boss Raila's allies accuse their Kenya Kwanza rivals of failing to consult before writing to Speaker about start of process. Former Governor Iria to host Odinga in Murang'a tomorrow. And demos on next week. Demos are on next week. This report is on page 4 and 5. Also editorial page on page 10 of the People Daily today. Mwangi says, quote unquote, we have issued the notice for the meeting and we want to invite as many people as possible so that we can have a conversation on the issues affecting the common person. And here we have an insert also of yesterday's meeting, a press conference there. Azimio One Kenya chiefs, Raila Odinga, Eugene Wamalwa, Kalonzo Musyoka, and Martha Karua, among others, addressing journalists at SKM Center, that is Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka Center in Nairobi yesterday. In addition to early demands, they asked the government to waive medical bills for protesters injured during violent clashes with police. This is a story that you want to follow inside the People Daily. 5 students perish in Grizzly Naivasha accident, and you can see the devastation there, the wreckage of a matatu. Police inspecting the wreckage of a matatu that collided with a trailer, killing learners from Mbihi Friends High School and the PSV driver. They were traveling home for April holidays. What a tragedy. And Treasury 6 experts to guide 162 billion shillings Eurobond quest is another story on page 15 of the People Daily. Taifa Leo, Raila mruka Ruto, it says, Azimio yatangaza kujiondoa kwenye mazungumzo yaliyohusisha bunge ikidai serikali haina nia njema. You can read all the details on page 2 of Taifa Leo. Wakenya wapunjwa na KPLC. Wakenya wapunjwa na KPLC. Kamati ya Seneti yagundua Wakenya wanalipa milioni 350 kwa stima wasiotumia. That's what we've been paying for. And you can read all the great details on page 4 of Taifa Leo.
That's not new.
Wataka Ngunjiri akamatwe. Right, the CS Lands there is in trouble on issues of land as well. So you can follow the story on page 5 of Taifa Leo. Wabunge watilia shaka mbolea nafuu. There's a story behind also the fertilizer, and now the committee in Parliament wants a probe on it. That is the Public Accounts Committee. That the 15 billion shillings fertilizer subsidy is embroiled in some scandal. You can read all the gritty details inside Taifa Leo. Let's back down to some business where state techs aim at big telcos with fresh dominance rules. They say dominance thresholds raised to half of industry sales operators once Safaricom declared dominant firm. The battle has been going on, and you know the story about the telcos and how the dominance of Safaricom has been raising some scruples with some telcos. And this is where the headline is heading to with new dominance rules. You can read all about it inside the Business Daily this morning. Also, bill blocks Chinese contractors from projects below 20 billion shillings. Some traders have moved to court so that they can rein in on the Chinese businessmen here in the country. Foreign firms will be locked out of government contracts below 20 billion shillings if Parliament approves changes to the law that will hit Chinese contractors hard. The bill seeks to raise the limit for foreign firms bidding for taxpayers-backed contracts from 500 million shillings to 20 billion shillings to protect local contractors. You can read all about it also in the Business Daily on page 2. And experts want KRA to set tax target to curb budget wars. The Kenya Revenue Authority should set its collection targets based on market realities to help keep the country's expenditure in control. Anson Young, tax expert, said yesterday in proposal to the 2023-2024 budget. Stanchart loans to sister banks rise to 83 billion shillings. State makes U-turn on SIM cards, hawking ban. Also, that tucked away inside the Business Daily this morning. Let's cross over to Uganda. We see what is happening. And this is the current state of play. We have 300 Ugandans who are caught up in Sudan, and fighting in the capital, Khartoum, continues despite a 24-hour ceasefire announced last evening as the Ugandan government seeks to evacuate many of its citizens who are, of course, learning, or they're actually in a dark conditions, it says. I cannot see very well what the sub-headline is reading there, but you can follow the story on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Monitor if you're waking up in Uganda this morning. Suspect 4, that is Nandutu, finally detained over iron sheet scandal. And this has been ongoing for almost 2 weeks right now with the investigation of iron sheets. So many of them are nailed on the iron sheet scandal. That is in Uganda. Also, Museveni commissions helicopter overhauled in Uganda. This is a helicopter that is overhauled in Uganda, firepower, and we can see him here commissioning that helicopter. Let's see what is happening in Tanzania. Regulators or regulatory sandbox for startups coming, a framework to test innovative products or service directly without having to face obstacles arising from existing laws or regulations is about to be launched. Story continues on page 2 of The Citizen. If you're waking up in Tanzania, EAC set to digitize common external tariffs. EAC is set to digitize common external tariffs, and tourism recovers as royal tour clocks 1 year. You can read all about it inside The Citizen. And also bad news, we have Nimrod Mukono dies in US, aged 79. Nimrod Mukono dies in US, aged 79. You can read all about him on inside The Citizen, where you have his obituary. There's nothing to worry about EA Corp. That is what TEC is saying. This is in Tanzania, mwananchi. Still in Tanzania, hakuna kubebana. Msimamo ajira mpya, hakuna kubebana. That is a splash. I'll leave it for you to decipher that. Also, Nimrod Mukono wa fariki is another story you can follow inside Mwananchi. The East African this week, it looks like this. Anatomy of graft. Web of corruption, wastage and neglect in a Tanzania public sector agencies threatens to taint Samia's legacy ahead of 2025 polls, but she has stepped up to slay the dragon. You have the story on page 4 and 5 of East African this morning, and of course the figures are broken down for you. I will not belabor the point. Grab a copy of East African for you to get all the gritty details about this as well. Also, citizens alarmed as region's government runs on empty. They are bracing for belt tightening as states cut spending and raise taxes amid funding squeeze, blamed on debt, low revenues. Also, census results divide Sudan or South Sudanese, I should say. Politicians say release figures point to plan to rig elections whose date is yet to be named and call for proper counts. That story continues on page 6 of the East African. China daily is up next. Sudan fighting takes toll, and you can see an aerial view of what is happening there. This is just an inset and how the bombing of the airport was. You can see one of the fuselage of the aeroplane there really burnt to smithereens as it is. And the burnt remains of an aircraft as seen on Monday at Khartoum International Airport in Sudan. The Sudanese army and rapid support forces who have been fighting since the weekend agreed on Tuesday to a 24-hour ceasefire, at least now to allow humanitarian aid to be accessible because of this ceasefire. This is what is on the front page of a China daily today. A nation's GDP growth stronger than expected. This is China. Recovery momentum lays solid foundation for meeting growth targets of around 5%. Chinese doctors build trust, bring hope in Zanzibar. This is another story if you want to follow that. Chinese doctors Zhao Xiangkong arrived in Zanzibar, Tanzania, with 7 of his colleagues in September after a flight of more than 10 hours. The unfamiliarity of his new surroundings was quickly replaced by a sense of feeling at home on the tropical islands. You can read all the details of these doctors also in Zanzibar from China. Let's see, finally, some of the magazines here. Time. This is the Time magazine. Time at 100, the world's most influential people.